This week on Quality Digest Live, 4 steps to preventing social media Armageddon.
Armageddon, that's right. Plus, Dirk reports on his experience at this week's Hexagon Live user conference in Anaheim, California. That and more when we come back.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for June 17th, 2016. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest.
He sure is, and I'm Quality Digest publisher Mike Richmond. Alrighty, well, we're going to start the show this week with a look at the necessary qualities of one of the most important additions to the C-suite over the past couple of years, the Chief Digital Officer, the CDO. We've actually talked about the CDO on the show and in Quality Digest Daily a couple of times. I mean, it's it's kind of an emergent C-suite position. Really important because the Chief Digital Officer does a lot for their companies. Actually, we're going to find out what exactly they do here with this next article. It's titled, "What Type of Chief Digital Officer Does Your Company Need?" And it's the name of a piece that appeared last week in PricewaterhouseCoopers Strategy and blog. We linked out to it in Wednesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. Well, as I mentioned, CDOs are responsible for an organization's, specifically for their brand and reputation online. And that means generally social media, mobile applications, e-commerce, and a lot more. In this piece, PricewaterhouseCoopers offers up 5 CDO archetypes and the environments in which they function best. So let's throw them up here on the screen. I want to show them to you. We'll go through them one by one here, and I'll describe what these individual folks are all about. The first one is the progressive thinker right there. Yes, the progressive thinker. It's an individual who is really a true visionary. It focuses on the digital transformation of the organization and also inspiring others within the organization to think digitally. This type of person works well in traditional industries that have yet to fully benefit from digitization, such as chemical oil, oil and gas, or mining, things like that. The next one is the creative disruptor. The creative disruptor is more hands-on than the progressive thinker. This executive really is great at developing new technologies and business models. Retailers and publishers, quote unquote publishers, those like us right here in media, need this type due to the severe and rapid changes confronting them in the digital space, and we can certainly speak to that. The next one is the customer advocate. And this is mainly a market-driven individual, and the CDO has a relentless focus on improving the customer journey across all channels that the organization offers digitally. Transactional environments such as banking and travel work best for this type of CDO. Fourth is the innovative technologist, and this is a professional who wants to promote the use of new digital technologies to transform the company's entire value chain. Manufacturing, with its focus on new ways to design and create prototypes, is generally a good sector for this kind of a CDO. And finally, you have the universalist. Just like it sounds, the mission for this executive is to manage all of the various aspects of an organization's digital transformation. These folks can have a great and really long-lasting effect on companies that are being kind of at the end of the digital curve. They need to catch up kind of quickly. So that's what the universalist is all about. Well, as this shows, I think, Dirk, there's really no one right way to be a chief digital officer. There's many paths to success, and it really depends on the individual's experience and skills, not to mention the company for which he or she may work. The PricewaterhouseCoopers report from which this information was derived, titled "The Right CDO for Your Company's Future," is available now. To find out more, just click on the story link right below this video player screen, right down there as always. Yeah, Chief Digital Officer, kind of a cool job if you think about it. And certainly for media companies we mentioned, but really for any company today, reputation online is really important. I'm going to actually be kind of circling back on this later in the show with another article we're going to be talking about that kind of reflects on this too. So stay tuned for that one.
Okay. Well, talking about digital technologies, particularly in manufacturing, augmented reality seems to be the latest buzzword in the industry, and the idea has actually been around for at least a decade. I mean, I know we reported on it back in an article back in February 2005. Yeah. But there's been a lot of changes. There's faster processing and advancements in displays that are making augmented reality more viable reliable than it has ever been. And if you haven't heard the term augmented reality, I'll just describe it for you here briefly. It's most often associated with using eyewear that has both a video camera and a built-in display that allows the user to see work instructions or other information superimposed within their glasses, kind of a see-through display, superimposed over what they are looking at through their glasses. So that's why it's augmented reality. You're seeing reality through your glasses, but superimposed over that are instructions and so forth. Well, Epson America, providers of the Moverio augmented reality smart eyewear platform, has announced a partnership with Aether, creators of augmented interactive reality software. It's a solution there's a solution that they've developed that enables deskless professionals to view things like checklists and step-by-step procedures on the glasses with hands-free interaction using gestures and voice and head motion. I've seen a demo of this. So within your glasses, you might see instructions, but you also might see buttons like out in front of you.
Right.
So you're actually seeing this projection out in front of you, and you're hitting buttons, which is kind of like when I walk around the streets of Chico sometimes. I see people like kind of talking to themselves, and I think there's something else going on there, but it kind of looks like that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay. This also allows, one of the other applications, it allows field people, and this is kind of interesting, to communicate with remote experts via the video that is being captured by the glasses, and they use this to resolve problems. So for instance, there's a field tech and he's trying to solve a problem out in the field, and so he calls up his buddy back at the office, the expert, and that expert can actually be looking through this guy's glasses,
right,
watching the guy, work on something. Oh, the screw you need is up and to the left. Yeah, that's it right there. Because he's watching the same thing. And also he could send him instructions if he needed. He could send him written instructions that would pop up on the glasses. Pretty cool.
Kind of cool.
Well, I just got back from the Hexagon Live show in Anaheim, California. And Hexagon and other manufacturing industry companies have been playing with augmented reality for a long time. So for instance, at this year's show, Hexagon was showing an iPad app that allows you to point your iPad at something within the plant, let's say a process plant, and get a CAD drawing of that plant or whatever superimposed over the camera image along with annotations. So I mentioned, let's say, a process industry. So you walk into any process plant and you'll see, lots and lots and lots of pipes, going everywhere. You'll see blowers and hoppers and motors and so forth. And a lot of what the maintenance guys have to do, have to go in there. They have to identify a particular pipeline, maybe trace it down to where it's going, find the motor that is a blower for that pipeline or a pump for that pipeline. So what happens is pretty cool. You hold up this iPad, and so in the iPad you see a picture of what it is you're looking at, but then superimposed over it is a CAD drawing. So they had a big image, like a ceiling high image of like a plant, right? So you hold it up, and overlying all the pipes, were like, this pipe is green, this pipe's yellow, this pipe's red. You can see where it, as you move it, you can see where the pipe's going. Tap on the pipe on your iPad and bring up all the specs. What's in it, construction, size, whatever information you want.
Wow, that's cool.
So very easily allows a maintenance person or somebody else to go through a plant or whatever and easily identify stuff they need to look
And
at.
it ties in with GPS.
And exactly. It's very, very cool. So this is really interesting stuff. We're going to see more of it. We are seeing a lot more augmented reality, particularly as the cost of, as we see here, goggles and so forth. They're still not particularly cheap, but they're a lot cheaper than what they were. And the heads-up displays and so forth are working a lot better too. So we're going to see more of it.
Yeah, that's really cool. Because that's what it's doing, is it's taking that data and it's overlaying it with GPS, so you know exactly where you are in space. So
some cases with GPS, some cases it's just doing it's simply doing a matchup, basically an image matchup. The CAD knows, basically it's capturing the image and it's going, oh yeah, that's this part of the cabinet, syncing them,
right?
Which means there has to be a little bit of a learn step in there in order to get oriented. But sometimes it's using, I have seen those that use GPS as well.
That's cool.
So it's very cool stuff. I mean, that way you're not locked into having to have a laptop with you or having to communicate over the phone, trying to tell somebody what it is you're looking at, or taking a
picture.
A picture of it and emailing it. You know, I mean, it's instantaneous, instantaneous feedback on what it is you're looking at. Pretty
Augmented
cool.
reality. That's
Pretty
so cool. And you mentioned Hexagon Live. You going to be bringing us a little more report from Hexagon Live later in the show. So
Yep.
we'll
Couple minutes.
stay tuned for that in a few minutes. All right.
Yep.
Thank you, Derek. All right, our next story is called Preventing Social Media Armageddon. It's a rather dramatic name of an article. We ran in Wednesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. You can see it right there. The piece was written by, Gilles Hillary, I think is how he pronounces his name.
Yep.
Gilles Hillary. He's a professor at INSEAD, which is one of the world's largest graduate business schools, and he's a professor over there of accounting, I think, actually. Well, all drama aside, and for all the great benefits it brings to individuals and companies alike, social media really does come with some inherent risks that need to be properly managed. And just a few minutes ago, earlier in the show, I spoke about 5 types of chief digital officers, right? And how they can benefit their companies. Well, protecting an organization from the damage of social media disasters, and then, of course, quickly recovering, if a disaster does unfortunately happen, could be a job for maybe a 6th kind of CDO archetype, the recovery and rehabilitation artist. I think that's probably
sounds good.
Pretty fair, you know. I don't know if any CDO would want to actually be that, but you know, that's part of the job too. If you're responsible for your company's digital footprint, is to you know, keep an eye on things and make sure that things are going well. Well, make no mistake, if things do go wrong in the social media sphere, fast recovery and rehab is really exactly what you're going to need. As Hillary points out, things can go wrong here in several different critically important ways, and we can kind of tick through them here rather quickly. Employees can sometimes intentionally harm the company on social media platforms. For example, if you're going to fire someone or lay them off, you might want to consider changing passwords or permissions so that they can't frag you on the social media front on their way out the door. He gives examples of that having happened where, you know, you have a team of people maybe that are doing your Twitter, and well, you lay them off and you forget to change your passwords.
Right, and all of a sudden
they say some interesting things on there about your company, so you don't want to necessarily do that. So make sure you're aware of that. Then there's leaking, another problem called leaking, in which employees can cause harm unintentionally, maybe through accidentally revealing some sensitive or maybe controversial information on their personal Facebook or their personal Twitter accounts, right? I mean, that happens too. People are all linked together. Now LinkedIn too. I mean, you may say something on your Facebook and Facebook knows what company you're with, and people can find that and say, well, hey, if this person, they use the example of a Holocaust denier at a university, I mean, you know, if this person has these views and the university doesn't want to be associated with them, they're going to be associated through social media. So
exactly. Yeah.
Got to be really careful about that. Serious threats can also come from those who are not employees as well. We all know about hacking, when those outside a company take over social media accounts and maliciously release sensitive information or spread misinformation. We've heard about hacks for decades now, right? I mean, that happens a lot too, so you got to be aware of that. And then, you know, not all non-employee threats are intentionally harmful. There's things called fumbling, which comes when those who have access to information release it to third parties or the media unintentionally. And then maybe they'll do things like they'll say something that they shouldn't have said, and they'll fail to say, well, this is off the record. And you know how those media types are, Dirk. I mean, if you don't say it's off the record, man, it's going to get published. And that's you fumbled it at that point. Then it's out there in social media world, and it's a problem. Well, Hillary suggests that combating these issues is a matter of risk management, and that digitally savvy companies can help themselves in this space primarily by closely monitoring all information out there on their brand and taking fast action. Fast is the key to overcome those problems. And yeah, again, fast. You know, the difference in media today is that information spreads pretty much in real time. Wasn't always that way in the days of print, of course. You know, but now with social media and instantaneous communications, major consumer-facing companies with hundreds of thousands or millions of followers can really literally see their reputations damaged or even destroyed worldwide in a matter of minutes. And it happens, you know, something gets out on social media, and in a matter of minutes, you can have your reputation be gone. And it's scary, you know? So you gotta be vigilant. Eternal vigilance really is required in this space, and that's kind of what we're talking about here with this potential for social media Armageddon. Well, there was an article we ran last month, and we talked about it on the show here too, by Hubert Gattignan, and he wrote an article called "Manipulating Consumers is Not Marketing." We ran it in QDL last month.
Really, it's not.
We talked about it in QDL. We talked about it in QDL on May 27th. But it's not. Of course, it's not marketing. But what he's talking about there is that the role of marketing has changed a lot in over the course of time, and that it used to be that that was what marketing was all about, right? I mean, you would just kind of tell people what they needed to know, and they would do it, right? But now marketers are really influencers, and that's really the key term here. Is that you want to use your influence to affect the market, because it's not a push industry. If you're a consumer-facing company, it used to be that you could push stuff out. There'd be a bunch of guys in a room somewhere in New York, maybe. You would sit down with a focus group and cigarettes all over, and they'd find out what the right message was, or what the right price point was, or how to leverage a product and push it out. And they could sell thousands or millions of units of something, right? Very quickly, depending on the price point. But that's not the way it is now. Now it's very much more of an arena where there's many voices. And there's voices that are consumer voices too, that are on Yelp and things like that, are really influencing what your brand's reputation and image is all about. So a smart marketer now has to take that and has to, yes, still shape it. There still has to be a strong hand involved in it, but you've got to do it in such a way that the consumers don't feel like you're dominating them. They want to be part of the conversation. They want to be encouraged to comment. You want them to comment. You want them to interact with you on social media, but you want them to do it in a way that you like, not the way that gets out of control. It's a very fine line. It's a very fine line, and it's not easy to do. And marketers today, CDOs today, we talked about CDOs, really need to understand that customer journey and understand that pull versus push thing. And if you get it right, it can be a great boon. If you get it wrong, and it's very easy to get it wrong, it can destroy your company like that.
Right.
So it's a hard one. I don't know. We're media people here. We're marketing guys. I'm a marketing guy. So to me, it's close to the knitting. I think about it a lot. And I think these kind of articles are cool to think about.
Well, I mean, you point out, and it's been discussed before, but really, you almost need a rapid response team for social media disasters, because if it takes you a day to get a group together to say, wow, there's all of a sudden there's this comment on us that's going viral, a day is like 10 years of bad publicity in the past, right? I mean, you've got to get on it right away. So you almost need a rapid response team whose only focus is, look, if something negative comes up in social media, how do we deal with it in the best way? And that isn't always necessarily denying, but it does mean you have a response ready, you know how you're going to deal with these, the people you pull in, and it's instantaneous. It's just day or night if it comes out, and there's software that will monitor this kind of stuff. If you start seeing your company's name showing up somewhere, it's like, okay, what is it? And get the team together and get on it and respond to it within half an hour if you could, 15 minutes if you could.
Right. And the key takeaway there is that you can't have a system where the hierarchy is such that you need to have levels and levels and levels of approval.
Right.
You can't say, okay, I got to kick that upstairs, I got to kick that upstairs, I got to kick that upstairs, and eventually the CEO says, yeah, sure.
Sure. By that time, stock prices have plummeted.
You've got to trust that rapid response team to know what they're doing and be able to respond to it in the right way. And so delegating that is a little scary for some very hierarchical organizations. So that's a part of the rethink of this too. And like I say, it ties in very neatly with this whole idea of a CDO.
Sure.
And what kind of a flat organization you want to have in today's modern, very tightly interconnected media world. Interesting days we're in.
All right, well, I mentioned earlier that I just got back from Hexagon's big user conference, Hexagon Live. This year it was down in Anaheim, California, and as you might expect, there was a lot of cool things to see, of course, at any user conference. So in this case, for the metrology group, there were structured white light scanners, a really wicked fast CMM. I'll try to talk about that maybe next week. That was an amazing CMM. That was the global EVO. There was the Mega Rob, which I'll tell you about the Mega Rob. We'll do a tech corner on Mega Rob next year. That is
next week.
That's crazy. And of course, all the software and peripherals that tie all these things together to create a complete quality manufacturing solution. So there was a lot to see there, but it really is this last bit, how a quote metrology company is really addressing the complete manufacturing process from design to field that I was interested in, because this is clearly where Hexagon Manufacturing Intelligence is moving. So I sat down with Hexagon Manufacturing Intelligence President, Norbert Hanke. to talk a little bit about his division and specifically about the change of its name from Hexagon Metrology to Hexagon Manufacturing Intelligence and why they made that change. Here's the interview. Norbert, back in November, this past November in Hong Kong at the Hexagon Live show there, you made an announcement that Hexagon Metrology was changing its name from Hexagon Metrology to Hexagon Manufacturing Intelligence. Why that change? I mean, Hexagon Metrology, it's a metrology company. I mean, the name kind of makes sense. What's the goal there?
Yeah. But I have to say as well, I mean, our DNA is metrology and will be, that's for sure. But with recent acquisitions like Vero, CAD/CAM, QDAS, data management, we actually left slightly the field of pure, let's call it metrology. And I think what is the underlying story here? The underlying story is that for sure we want to capture data, no doubt. But the question is every time, what do we do with the data from my point of view? And therefore we came up in Hong Kong, you may reconsider this, sensing, thinking and acting. So where we can use the data inside the manufacturing process much better and to interlink. So we are looking into the links to get the connectivity, the data going forward from my point of view. Today we just announced not only that we want to do this, because we had further acquisitions of FTI, for example, Forming Technology Inc., where we say, no, we want to go even further in the different phases of the product life cycle, like in the design side, from my point of view.
So, okay, I mean, that seems kind of conceptual, but what does that look like in the real world? I mean, you have, let's say, a CMM, and you have, I don't know, a laser tracker, and maybe a structured light scanner. You've got these sensors taking data from the factory floor, and that data, then what happens with it?
I hope the following will happen, that we get the data, accurate data. Okay, that's very important, I think, that this still exists in the sense. And then we use the data, structure the data, because when we are now comparing different data sets, then it starts to get information out of it. And that's the whole idea, that the data itself is nice, but we want to have information and then to have actionable information out of this. And what, for example, in the manufacturing process is that for sure we have, say, a part produced, we inspect this as well, then either directly on the machine tool itself or on the CMM, and create a feedback loop to the CAD/CAM side immediately back. So that's the tool path is, for example, changing. These are ideas we have from our point of view, and we have seen more and more customers which are interested to see this from our point of view.
And does this also include feeding clear back to, let's say, the design stage?
At the end, yes, fair enough. FDI is just 3 months with us. We are working on certain concepts, how to do this going forward, absolutely.
I mean, in a sense, it sounds a little like a PLM system. Is that too?
People are saying this. No, it's not.
No? Okay.
Because a PLM system includes much more data to start off. We are, and that has to be is very clear, we are a metrology company from the DNA side. So we are talking about quality data. That we want, say, with our product MMS, which is then the backbone, say, of our information string, we want to disseminate in other areas from my point of view. But we are not creating a PLM system.
In a sense, it sounds like what you're doing is, many of our readers will be familiar with what Ford has been doing. Ford is trying to rebrand themselves as not an auto company, but a mobility company, whatever it takes to get from A to B. And it sounds like Hexagon's trying to do the same thing, but in the context of what, manufacturing?
Yes, and quality as well, quality manufacturing from our point of view. And I think that is absolutely correct. I think we see ourselves more on the information technology side with the base, let's call it quality from my point of view. Okay. So you will hear every time that we're coming back to the quality data.
Now, I think you told me earlier that you're still in kind of the construction phase of getting all the pieces connected. So what's your biggest challenge right now to get all this connectivity and all this forward, feedback and backward feedback loops going?
Yeah, let's be very clear. I think one thing is PowerPoint, and that's normally 10% of the work. So now the details start, and that's normally 90% of this. So we have, I think, great ideas. We have great people, great synergies, and now we have to work on the synergies to make it happen from our point of view. And that's, in most of the cases, we are just either started with FTL, or have even going further ahead with other things on MMS and so on.
And I would imagine, I mean, Hexagon makes a lot of their own equipment originally. Yeah. And of course, you've acquired a lot of companies that make their own equipment. And I'm guessing that the communication isn't always necessarily the same between all of them. Is that kind of a...
That is
and
as
you have,
well.
You have a, if I remember seeing a booth around here, a development team, Convergence, I think was called, the software that helps tie all these together.
Exactly. So I think that is something as well more on the Hexagon side as well, because that is needed to be as well. Connectivity is very important, I think. That helps us. But I do agree, when you acquire companies, there's certain things, say, where you have two cultures, two IT systems, two mindsets as well. And now we have to merge this to a common mindset. And I think we are on a good way, I must say.
Okay, well, Norbert, thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Now, you may have noticed a lot of what he talked about, even though he may not have used the word data specifically. I think he did a few times. But a lot of what he's talking about is data. And you'll see this not only within Hexagon Manufacturing Intelligence, but within Hexagon as a whole. If you talk to Ulla Rollin, president of Hexagon, I call it Big Hexagon, Big Hexagon.
Hexagon AB, I think.
Hexagon AB. Yeah. The whole thrust of everything is all of their sensors, whether metrology sensors or geospatial sensors or land mapping, whatever. It all comes down to data. So what do you do with this data? So in the sense of Hexagon Manufacturing Intelligence, you're collecting all this metrology data, and sure, it's good for inspection, but his point is, well, it's good for a lot of other things too. If you can feed that data back to design, you can help the design. If you can feed inspection data back to the actual equipment that's making it, you can do real-time corrections in many cases on stuff that's being fixed, and you can feed the data forward the field service folks, right? So it's what you do with this data, and that's why they're doing the Ford thing and kind of rebranding themselves as, no, we're not just a metrology company. We are a manufacturing data or manufacturing intelligence company.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, and that's why we talk about marketing a lot and branding a lot, because this stuff counts. I mean, you say you're a metrology company, you're Hexagon Metrology, that means something. It means something about test and measurement, that's what you do. Well, Hexagon's got a much broader vision. Like Ford has a much broader vision of just being an automotive company.
It's whatever it takes to get from point A to point B.
Right.
But
whatever
it is.
Yeah, but there's a much, just like that for Hexagon. Same thing, get from point A to point B. The idea is that you want to do your work better, you want to manufacture better, and that means gathering data. And it means not just gathering data, but using data. And it's one thing to just have all this data around as a function of doing the test and measurement, but understanding what it means and understanding what you can do with it is really the key thing right now. And hey, we talk about big data a lot on the show too. I mean, this is a problem for a lot of companies, is saying, okay, we've got all this data, years of data in some cases, what do we do with it now? What does it mean? How do we find the pieces of data where it really counts? That's what Hexagon's looking at. That's what Hexagon's trying to do.
And it has its own set of issues. I mean, anybody who follows Hexagon knows that they're constantly acquiring company. And we touched on this in the interview a little bit. So Hexagon makes its own equipment, let's say Hexagon Manufacturing Intelligence. So you got the Roamer and you got some other stuff that they have traditionally made, right? And so they understand how those communicate and so forth. But then they acquire Cognitens and they acquire, who was the new one they just got? Well, Cognitens was one. They're constantly buying new hardware companies. And those don't necessarily use the same communication protocols and stuff. So now you've got data sitting there. Well, now you've got to somehow integrate it within everything else that they're doing, and that is one of the things that they're constantly working on. And they actually have a group set up specifically to say, okay, what is the easiest way to have an equipment agnostic piece of software, maybe middleware that goes in between the equipment and the cloud, or the equipment and our other applications, that can bring this data in no matter what machine it is, and allow us to do with it what we want to do with it. And it is a big issue. I mean, it's harder to control as you're always constantly acquiring companies. So
interesting company, Hexagon. We've been in that show for several years now. And it's always Always a mind open, always brain open.
Next week, Mega Rob.
That's right. Stay tuned for that one. All right, well, before we close the show, we got a tweet of the week for you. And this one is, I think, a tweet among tweets. I like this one. It comes to us from Twitter user Uberfax, and it needs to be seen as well as heard to truly appreciate it. But we'll read it first. The tweet reads, Banksy once installed a fake prehistoric cave painting in the British Museum, and days went by before anyone noticed it. Well, as you can see, here is the cave painting they put up there. Banksy also hung a sign saying that this painting showed early man venturing out toward out-of-town hunting grounds, shopping cart in tow. I thought that was pretty good. I can imagine the curator finding that and thinking, what?
Like, what?
What is this? Banksy, of course, if you don't know who he is, he's an awesome graffiti artist and prankster, and this one may have been one of his top scams of all times. So, as always, for more great tweets on quality, on management, on standards, and on fine art, be sure to check us out on Twitter at Quality Digest.
That's right. Okay, and before we close, next week we're going to try an experiment. I'm pretty certain we're going to try an experiment. We're going to try doing live chat during the show, and if you're interested in doing that, most likely the way this is going to work, there's going to be a link out to our YouTube channel, which has a chat screen on it. So at any time during the show, you can chat to us. The only thing you need to be able to log in. So if you have a Google account, your Google login credentials will get you into YouTube, and you can chat with us during the show. Maybe ask us questions.
Ask us anything. We're gonna have a new segment called Ask Us Anything.
It doesn't matter what it is. We'll have an answer for you.
Oh yeah, we will.
we will.
We'll have an answer. Yeah.
All right. So thanks for joining us today, and we will see you next Friday. So
have a great weekend. Bye.